Yellowstone supervolcano. It's a caldera volcano. Like they didn't realize that it was so big until somewhere in like the 2000s, I think it was. They did satellite imagery and they realized, oh my God.
Yellowstone National Park is home to a dormant supervolcano that poses a potential threat to the surrounding region. Scientists closely monitor the park for any signs of volcanic activity, such as ground deformation and increased thermal activity. While occasional seismic activity occurs, experts suggest that eruption might be sooner than we think. Ongoing research and monitoring are essential to better understand the geological forces at play and to mitigate potential risks. Join us as we explore the intriguing and threatening depths of Yellowstone's geological mysteries. Yellowstone's hidden rage, a massive volcano waiting to erupt. Under the vast wilds of Yellowstone lies a world far from calm. This peaceful-looking place hides a powerful force of nature, ready to burst at any moment. The ground itself seems to share stories of coming danger quietly. Without a loud warning, the landscape filled with strange and quiet signs alerts us. A massive dome filled with the power of volcanoes rises, showing us the energy hidden underneath. The calm lakes that once mirrored the sky now show signs of unrest with their changing levels. And there's a giant crack in the ground, over 300 feet long, hinting at chaos that might come. Welcome to Yellowstone National Park, a place of breathtaking beauty that might also bring about massive destruction across its vast 2.2 million acres. This park showcases the best of nature's colors and is home to mysteries and hidden dangers that draw scientists from all over the world. At its core is a caldera volcano, a supervolcano that could cause unthinkable destruction, capable of wiping out entire countries or continents. These supervolcanoes have erupted periodically, with long pauses between eruptions, making the current period of calm a time of anticipation and concern for what's to come. For thousands of years, volcanic forces under Yellowstone have shaped a landscape that's both beautiful and dangerous, under the watchful eyes of the U.S. Geological Survey. The area's unique geothermal features and the dramatic scenery are the results of many massive volcanic eruptions, creating a geological masterpiece that constantly reminds us of the power beneath the Earth's crust. The Yellowstone area has seen 3 significant volcanic periods in the last 2 million years, with some eruptions being among the largest in the world. These events have created enormous lava flows that shape the park as we know it today. The last major flow, known as the Pitchstone Plateau Flow, happened around 77,000 years ago. The volcanic activity in Yellowstone is due to a hotspot beneath the Earth, a place where magma from deep within the mantle makes its way to the surface. This hotspot has left a trail of volcanic activity stretching over 750 kilometers, creating several large volcanic centers before reaching the current location of Yellowstone. This ongoing process suggests a continuous but unpredictable cycle of volcanic activity that could lead to future eruptions. Over the course of its long history, Yellowstone has been the site of 3 huge eruptions that were so powerful they formed big bowl-shaped areas called calderas. These events threw out a massive amount of volcanic stuff, covering large areas with a mix of ash and rock fragments. In some places, the layers of this material are more than 1,300 feet deep, showing just how powerful these eruptions were. After everything exploded and settled, the land above where the molten rock came from fell in, creating the calderas we can see now. Between these big blowups, Yellowstone also had eruptions that made different kinds of rock. There were big flows of a type of rock called rhyolite and smaller bursts that sent rock and ash flying, filling up the calderas. At the same time, lava flows made of basalt, a different kind of rock, popped up around the edges. These flows really changed the look of the land inside and around the calderas, making it as interesting and unique as it is today. The Yellowstone Volcano Observatory keeps a close eye on the park, watching for signs of volcanic activity, changes in the hot springs and geysers, and earthquakes. Even though there hasn't been a big eruption for a while, Yellowstone is home to the world's biggest collection of hot springs and geysers, making it a natural wonder. Imagine if Joe Rogan were to talk about Yellowstone in a serious tone, warning us about the dangers it might pose. And then Elon Musk chimes in, adding his thoughts on the shifts happening beneath the surface, suggesting that Yellowstone might be waking up from a long nap.
Just sort of 4 or 5 things I thought would really affect the future.
Right at the heart of all this action is the Yellowstone caldera. This huge dent in the earth was left by those ancient super eruptions. It's a clear sign of how wild and destructive nature can be. The most recent of these super eruptions, happening 631,000 years ago, sent so much ash into the sky that it covered much of North America and even changed the weather around the world. But what happens after such a massive eruption? It's not like things just go back to normal. Instead, Yellowstone shows us a cycle of destruction and new growth. The ground swells as new magma fills up spaces below, creating what are known as resurgent domes. These aren't just simple hills, they're massive, rising high from the caldera floor, and they tell scientists a lot about what's happening under Yellowstone and what might happen in the future. The Sour Creek Dome and Mallard Lake Dome, for example, are not just beautiful natural features. They're clues to the ongoing story of one of the most fascinating places on Earth. Let's go deeper into Yellowstone's mysteries, facing signs of a big change ahead. What's beneath this volcanic beast? Underneath the peaceful exterior of Yellowstone's wide and wild spaces, there's a giant, sleeping but always on the edge, signaling a big change might happen. This isn't just a story made up for fun, it's a real sign of possible chaos hidden under a place many Americans love. Then Elon Musk comes into the picture. He's not someone you'd usually find talking about science stuff, but here he is making us all worry about the giant volcano sleeping under Yellowstone. Musk, who knows a lot about both science and business, isn't just here to talk about his latest inventions. He's here to warn us about a big danger waiting to happen under the ground. Musk, always liking to make things sound more dramatic, hints that an eruption might already be starting under Yellowstone, mixing fear with a bit of excitement. Thinking about such huge forces moving under us is scary and makes us realize how small we are when nature decides to show its power. Musk's story is like a warning, making us think about what's happening under the ground and how it could lead to big changes, not just here, but all over the world. He talks straight, making it clear we all need to pay attention to the dangerous power under Yellowstone. Musk's serious warnings match what scientists have recently found out about Yellowstone, which is kind of worrying. They found out that there's a big dome in the volcano, which makes us question what we thought we knew about volcanoes that aren't erupting. This makes us want to learn more and get ready for what might happen. The story gets even more interesting with scientists like Dr. Robert Christensen and Robert Smith from the University of Utah, who've noticed something odd about the water levels in Yellowstone Lake. What they found shows there's something unbalanced underneath, like a seesaw, pointing to big changes happening deep under the ground. This quiet sign of moving forces tells us there's a growing threat under the calm surface of the lake. Imagine Yellowstone like a pot of water that's not sitting flat on the stove. This idea helps us picture how the ground in Yellowstone, especially under Yellowstone Lake, is always moving and changing. The movements we see are because of hot, molten rock and hot water moving below the surface. Around the northern part of Yellowstone Lake, there's a lot of hot water shooting up from the ground, and even the biggest explosion crater from hot water anywhere in the world, located at Mary Bay. These hot water features show us how the land can quickly change, either from earthquakes or when the lake's water levels jump up or down. There's a special project called HDY Lake that's trying to learn more about this by checking out the water's temperature, how heat moves through the area, and any shaking from earthquakes. This project is really important because it helps us understand how the hot water, the moving earth, and even tiny life forms in the lake all work together. Since the 1970s, people have noticed that the ground in Yellowstone moves up and down. Using tools like GPS and something called INSAR, which helps measure how the ground shifts, scientists have gotten really good at keeping track of these movements. These tools have shown us that the ground moves because of the hot molten rock below, water, and gases, making the land either lift up or sink down. When we look at how the ground moves in Yellowstone and compare it to other places with volcanoes, like Long Valley in California or Campi Flegrei in Italy, we see some big differences. For example, the ground movement in Campiflagrai is much more than in Yellowstone, which has caused a lot of problems for people living there. This helps us understand that the ground moving because of volcanoes can be a big deal and affects places all over the world in different ways. Thanks to new ways of watching the ground move, like using GPS and special radar, scientists can now see even the tiniest changes in how the ground shifts in Yellowstone. This careful watching helps us learn more about the volcano under Yellowstone and what it might do. Even though we're getting better at understanding it, there's still a lot we don't know, which is why it's so important to keep an eye on this giant volcano. Let's explore Yellowstone's depths, where technology meets ancient mysteries. The silent signals Yellowstone eruption history explain. In Yellowstone's vast and intricate wilderness, filled with geysers releasing steam as though the earth itself is breathing out, old-fashioned ways of measuring the land, like geodetic leveling, now seem charmingly outdated. These old methods, which used to capture the earth's subtle movements with great care, have been replaced by modern technology that allows us to see into the heart of the park with incredible detail. Despite the advanced technology available to us, Yellowstone's true nature remains something of a riddle, wrapped in secrets and gentle hints. Long ago, the people who first studied the landscape used tools with the care and precision you'd expect from someone performing surgery, recording the smallest changes in the landscape with deep respect. Using simple tools and markers, they set out on a detailed mission to track the Earth's quiet shifts. Impressively, more than 500 markers they placed in Yellowstone since their first thorough survey in 1923 still mark the changing land today. Nowadays, with the advancement of technology, researchers can access continuous data, getting an up-to-date look at how earthquakes and other forces are molding Yellowstone. However, even with all this new knowledge, the behaviors of the caldera, and especially the super-volcano beneath Yellowstone, remain mysterious. The park's history is filled with stories of eruptions and significant geological events, showcasing its unpredictable nature. After an earthquake in 1975, scientists discovered that the center of the caldera had risen more than 28 inches since 1923, moving at a rate of about 1.4 centimeters per year. This discovery showed us a landscape constantly changing, with the ground moving in ways that are surprisingly quick compared to the slow growth of the surrounding plant life. From 1923 to 1975, the area around Yellowstone, especially the regions near the Mallard Lake and Sour Creek Rising domes, saw notable shifts. During this time, the ground went through ups and downs, much like a trampoline, thanks to the volcanic and geothermal activity underneath. The changes in the land were caused by the buildup and release of magma, water, and gases below, leading to periods of both rising and sinking ground. This detailed look into Yellowstone's past and present highlights not just the park's dynamic geological activity, but also the continuous effort by scientists to understand and monitor these natural processes. With each new discovery and technological advance, our grasp of Yellowstone's complexities grows, though the supervolcano beneath continues to keep its secrets, reminding us of the awe-inspiring power of the natural world. The changes in the ground at Yellowstone National Park aren't as straightforward as the ground simply rising or falling. Instead, it's about how different elements, like hot molten rock moving below and the pressure from hot water and steam, interact with each other. From 1923 to 1975, through detailed surveys, scientists discovered that the middle of the Yellowstone caldera lifted up by over 28 inches, growing at a rate of about half an inch each year. The most noticeable lifting happened between the Mallard Lake and Sour Creek Resurgent domes, right next to famous spots like Old Faithful. This lifting is believed to happen because the hot molten rock below comes up closer to the surface, filling up spaces in the previously emptied magma reservoir and pushing the ground above it upwards, forming a kind of bulge. As technology got better, with things like GPS and radar that can see through the earth, scientists were able to track the ground's movements much more clearly. These tools showed that the ground at Yellowstone is always changing, with the land moving up and down in different spots at different times. This constant movement is also tied to the small earthquakes that happen often in Yellowstone, which tell us the volcano underneath is still active. Between 1983 and 1985, People watching the park saw the ground keep rising until a bunch of earthquakes in 1985 made the ground suddenly drop. This dropping is like the Earth letting out a breath, caused by the escape of rock, water, and steam that were under pressure below. Starting in 1995, the ground movements became even more complicated, showing new spots where the ground was lifting up faster than before. These changes in the ground are closely linked to the small earthquakes in the area, showing the hidden strength of Yellowstone. During this time, a huge crack appeared near Hidden Falls in the Grand Teton National Park, showcasing how unpredictable the Earth can be. This big crack, known as the Hidden Falls Fissure, showed up suddenly and served as a powerful reminder of the wild forces of nature. Its closeness to Yellowstone made people worry more, highlighting how everything in the area is connected and can change quickly. The appearance of this crack, while surprising, fits into the constantly changing landscape of Yellowstone. Its position near a known area for earthquakes made people even more alert, stressing the need to keep an eye on the area and continue studying it. Discover the power and puzzles of Yellowstone, a land of fire beneath our feet, a crack in the ground, Yellowstone's quiet danger. When the Hidden Falls Fissure suddenly appeared in Yellowstone, it was like a loud wake-up call from nature itself, showing us that the ground we walk on isn't as unchanging as we might think. Instead, the earth beneath us is alive, bubbling and shifting in ways that can suddenly show themselves in dramatic and even scary changes. This crack in the ground, while it might make us stop and stare in wonder, is a clear sign of how active and unpredictable the Earth can be, especially in places like Yellowstone that are known for their intense geological activity. Nature's tendency to change in unexpected ways remains one of the mysteries that, no matter how much we learn, seems to keep us guessing. Yellowstone isn't just any volcano, it's one of the biggest supervolcanoes on the planet. It has a long history of massive eruptions, with the last one happening about 630,000 years ago. But these big explosions are just part of the story. The volcanic activity in Yellowstone started around 17 million years ago and has been a continuous force shaping the land as the North American plate moved over a spot of intense heat from deep within the Earth. This hot spot sends up a column of hot material that feeds a huge pool of molten rock below Yellowstone, leading to all the volcanic features we see in the park today. If Yellowstone were to erupt again, it wouldn't just be a local problem. Such an eruption would have effects all around the world, sending clouds of ash across the continent and possibly causing cooler temperatures globally. Nearby, the eruption could wipe out forests and cover everything in ash, while farther away, the ash could affect air travel and even the climate. The landscape of Yellowstone itself could change dramatically, with the ground collapsing to form a large basin called a caldera. But even with all these potential dangers, scientists say a big eruption like this isn't likely to happen anytime soon. The way the ground moves in Yellowstone gives us clues about what's happening below the surface. This moving, or deformation, happens because of the hot rock and fluids moving around beneath the park. Thanks to new ways of looking at the Earth, like using seismic imaging that works a bit like a CT scan, we're starting to get a clearer picture of these underground processes. These methods have shown us that there's a complex network of molten rock beneath Yellowstone, much more complicated than we once thought. This ongoing research is crucial as it helps us keep an eye on the park and understand the forces at work beneath it better. But we really shouldn't think of this ash as just the leftovers from a warm fire. Instead, imagine a storm of sharp, tiny sand particles falling from the sky, covering everything in sight. This ash could make it hard to see and breathe, damaging the land and air around us for a long time. Right after a volcano like Yellowstone erupts, it would create chaos. Travel by road, train, or plane would stop, and people would have to stay inside to avoid the harmful ash that could hurt their lungs and break down machines. The problems caused by the ash are just the start. The ash could weaken buildings, turn off the electricity, and make drinking water dirty, which would make life even harder for people who are already struggling. And it's not just about the ash. The gases that come out during an eruption, especially sulfur dioxide, could seriously harm the environment. When sulfur dioxide mixes with the water in the air, it makes acid rain, which can kill plants and animals, damage buildings, and make people sick. Whoa. One of the scariest things that could happen after Yellowstone erupts is a volcanic winter. This is when so much ash and gas fill the sky that they block out the sun, making the whole world colder for a long time. This could ruin farms everywhere, leading to not having enough food and causing a lot of other big problems. Elon Musk pointed out how much we all rely on good weather and having enough food. Even though scientists are keeping a close eye on Yellowstone, it's hard to predict exactly when an eruption might happen. The U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, watches Yellowstone closely, but even with all their equipment, it's tough to tell when an eruption will occur. The small shakes and changes in the ground that happen all the time might seem normal for Yellowstone, but they make it hard to know when something big might be about to happen. Get ready for a journey where the hidden power of Yellowstone could soon change everything we know. Yellowstone's danger and newfound discoveries. Yellowstone's potential eruption seems to be sneaking up on us faster than we'd all prefer. This situation makes us wonder if we're ready to face such a powerful natural event. We could soon find ourselves in the midst of emergency evacuations, quickly using up resources, and trying to make our communities safer before the disaster strikes. And there's a chance we might not even see it coming until the volcano is ready to blow, which would force us to deal with the consequences and clean up afterward. To understand what an eruption from a supervolcano like Yellowstone could mean, we need to take a deep dive into history. By examining old lava flows and layers of ash that Yellowstone's eruptions have left behind for thousands of years, we get a clearer picture of the immense natural forces involved. From about 170,000 to 70,000 years ago, Yellowstone was a center of intense volcanic activity. Not just one, but many massive eruptions occurred. These events sent rivers of lava pouring out, spewed out clouds of ash, and blasted rock and gas into the air, all because of a huge underground supply of molten rock and gas that couldn't be contained. These ancient eruptions did more than just show off the power of nature. They completely changed the landscape. The flows of lava and explosive bursts reshaped the ground, creating the beautiful and unique environment of Yellowstone that we see today. Thinking about how such powerful eruptions would affect our lives in the world today is both interesting and a bit scary. The slow movement of lava and the changes it brings to the land can make new valleys and plains, forming the perfect setting for Yellowstone's famous hot springs and geysers. Looking deeper, right to where the Earth's molten rock starts, tells us even more about how volcanoes work. This hot, liquid rock comes from deep within the Earth, driven by intense heat and pressure. As it moves up, it can cause eruptions, or less dramatic, but still significant uplifts in the land. In Yellowstone, this process doesn't always lead to eruptions, but can slowly lift the land, creating features like the Sour Creek and Mallard Lake domes. But why doesn't the journey of this molten rock beneath Yellowstone always lead to an eruption? The key factors are the type of molten rock, called magma, and how tough the ground above it is. The magma under Yellowstone moves slowly and has a lot of gases, which means it could cause huge eruptions. Yet sometimes there's no eruption because the magma finds ways to let out pressure slowly, raising the ground gently instead of breaking it apart. The ground's makeup and strength are really important in this story. If the ground can bend a little without breaking, it can form a dome shape. This dome acts like a safety valve, letting out some of the underground pressure. This balance between the magma moving and the ground lifting up is like a complicated dance. The forming of a dome tells us there's a lot of activity going on under the volcano, but it also can cause problems by changing the natural plumbing system underground, which might lead to earthquakes or change how water and gases move around. Volcanic domes, like the ones in Lassen Volcanic National Park and the Valles Caldera National Preserve, show us how volcanoes can shape the Earth. These domes are made when thick lava piles up right at the volcano's opening instead of flowing out. They can grow from a single eruption, lasting a short time but sometimes get too full of gas or too steep, and then can explode, sending out rocks and ash. Even though they can be dangerous, the eruptions that build these domes usually don't explode in a big way. This careful balance is a good example of how the Earth's volcanic activities and its landscape interact. The dangers of volcanic domes became very clear with events like the collapse of the Unzen volcanic dome in Japan, which caused a huge and deadly flow of ash and rock. Now, scientists are using tools like satellites to watch these domes more closely. They hope to spot changes early on that might warn of an upcoming eruption. A dome growing can sort of plug the volcano, building up pressure until it either becomes solid and stable or breaks apart, sending out dangerous flows of ash and rock. This shows how connected all the parts of a volcano are, affecting each other and the risk of eruption. So seeing domes form in places like Yellowstone gives scientists clues about what the volcano might do next. Watching how these forces under the ground work together reminds us just how active and changing our planet is, with the ground we walk on always moving and shifting. How can we get ready for Yellowstone's next big eruption? It's a giant that's shown its power before, and it's still active. What effects would an eruption have now? Hit like and subscribe for more.